Kang Minho pressed his face against the small window of the transport ship and watched the massive space station grow larger. Nexus Prime looked like a giant metal flower floating in the dark space, with bright lights twinkling from thousands of windows. His heart beat fast with excitement and fear. This was really happening. He was going to study at the Galactic Academy. The 19-year-old human had dreamed of this moment since he was a child. Only 3 humans had ever been accepted to the Academy before him. His parents back on Earth had cried when he left. His sister Somin had hugged him tight and promised to send him care packages. "First time off your home planet?" asked the pilot, a tall blue creature with 4 arms. His name was Captain Rextall, and he had been kind to Minho during the 3-day journey. "Yes," Minho replied in the common galactic language he had studied for years. "I am very nervous." Captain Rextall laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "The Academy is a good place. You will learn much. But remember, young human, you are very different from the other students. Your species is still new to space travel. Many will see you as strange." The transport ship docked with a soft bump. Minho grabbed his single bag and followed Captain Rextall through the airlock. The moment he stepped onto the station, his mouth fell open. The ceiling was so high he could not see the top. Creatures of all shapes and sizes walked, floated, and crawled through the wide hallways. Some looked like walking trees, others like living rocks. A few were just glowing balls of light that spoke through electronic devices. A small robot with a friendly voice guided Minho to the dormitory section. "Welcome to Galactic Academy, student Kang Minho. You have been assigned to room 847B. Your roommate is already waiting." The dormitory was a long, curved hallway with hundreds of doors. Each door had strange symbols that Minho's translator device read aloud. When he reached room 847B, he took a deep breath and pressed the entry button. Inside, the room was split into 2 halves. One side looked normal to Minho, with a bed, desk, and storage units made for humanoid creatures. The other side was very different. Instead of furniture, there were tall crystal formations and a pool of what looked like liquid, silver. "You must be the human," said a voice that sounded like music. The crystals on the other side of the room began to glow, and slowly a shape formed from the light. It looked like a person made of clear glass, but with sharp edges and facets that threw rainbows across the walls. "I am Veltar of the Crystal Reaches," the being said. "I have heard much about your species. You are very young compared to most civilizations in the galaxy." Minho bowed politely. "Nice to meet you, Veltar. I am Kang Minho from Earth. Thank you for sharing your room with me." Veltar's light flickered, which Minho guessed was like a smile. "I am curious about humans. Your species still uses primitive chemical rockets, yet you scored high enough on the Academy entrance tests to be accepted. This is unusual." Over the next few hours, Veltar helped Minho understand how life worked at the Academy. Classes began at different times for different species, depending on their natural cycles. Some creatures were active during what humans called day, others during night. The library contained knowledge from thousands of worlds, and the nutrition center provided food for every type of being in the galaxy. When it was time for the evening meal, Veltar led Minho to the nutrition center. The room was enormous, with hundreds of feeding stations designed for different species. Some looked like gas pumps for creatures that absorbed energy directly. Others were pools for aquatic beings. There was even a section where plant-like creatures stood under bright lights. "Here is the humanoid section," Veltar said, pointing to a row of dispensers. The Academy nutritionists have created the perfect food formula for your species. It contains exactly what your body needs, nothing more, nothing less. Minho approached one of the dispensers and pressed his palm against a scanner. A green light flashed and a tube of gray paste squeezed out into a bowl. Next to it, a cup filled with clear liquid. He looked at the gray paste and felt his stomach turn. "This is food?" "Of course," Veltar said, his crystals brightening with confusion. "The Academy employs the best nutritional scientists in the galaxy. This meal has been calculated to provide optimal nutrition for human biology. It is perfect." Minho took a small bite. It had no taste at all. It was like eating wet cardboard. He forced himself to swallow and tried the liquid. It was equally flavorless, like drinking air. Around him, other students were consuming their meals. The plant creatures absorbed light. The rock-like beings ground up mineral chunks. Flying creatures drank from tubes of colored gas. None of them seemed to enjoy it. They just consumed what they needed and left. "On my planet," Minho said carefully, "food tastes different. We have many flavors." Veltar's crystals dimmed with concern. "Flavors? But why would you want to alter perfect nutrition? Taste is an inefficient biological response. Most civilized species eliminated it long ago through genetic modification or technology." That night, Minho lay on his bed staring at the ceiling. His stomach growled with hunger, but he could not force himself to eat more of the gray paste. He thought about his mother's cooking back home, the smell of garlic and onions in the kitchen, the spicy taste of kimchi, the warm comfort of soup on a cold day. For the next week, Minho attended his classes and tried to make friends. He studied advanced physics with creatures that had brains the size of small buildings. He learned about stellar engineering from beings made of pure energy. The knowledge was incredible, but he was always hungry. Every meal was the same gray paste and clear liquid. Every day he felt weaker. Other students began to notice that the human was getting thinner. His roommate, Veltar, expressed concern in his musical voice. "Perhaps you should visit the medical center," Veltar suggested. "Your nutrition levels must be perfect, but your body appears to be rejecting optimal feeding." Professor Quindar, a tall purple creature with tentacles for arms, taught the advanced nutrition class that Minho attended. She noticed his condition during a lecture about molecular food synthesis. "Student Minho," she said after class, "you appear to be suffering from nutritional deficiency. This should be impossible. Our food formulas are tested on thousands of species." "I think I am just homesick," Minho replied, not wanting to insult the Academy's food science. But deep inside, he knew the problem was not just homesickness. It was the food. His body was designed for variety, for flavors, for the complex chemistry of real cooking. The perfect nutrition paste might have all the right molecules, but it was missing something essential that human biology needed. That night, he sent a message to his sister on Earth. He tried to sound happy and excited about his studies, but he ended the message with a simple request. "Could you send me a care package? I miss the taste of home." 3 weeks later, Minho sat in his advanced mathematics class trying to focus on quantum calculations, but his empty stomach kept making loud noises. The gray nutrition paste had become impossible to eat. Even the smell of it made him feel sick. He had lost 10 pounds, and his clothes hung loose on his thin frame. His classmates, a mix of different alien species, had begun to whisper about the human who was slowly wasting away. Some thought it was a strange human ritual. Others believed he had caught a disease from his primitive home planet. After class, Minho dragged himself back to his dormitory room. Veltar was there, his crystal body pulsing with worried colors. "A package has arrived for you," his roommate said. "It passed through security scanning, but the contents appear unusual." On Minho's desk sat a metal container about the size of a shoebox. The shipping label was written in Korean and the common galactic language. It was from his sister, Somin. Minho's hands shook as he opened the security seals. Inside, the package was carefully packed with regulation study materials. On top, his translator device identified several academic books about Earth history and human culture. These were allowed items for exchange students. But when he moved the books aside, his eyes filled with tears of joy. Hidden beneath the official study materials was a treasure that was worth more than gold to the hungry young man. His sister had somehow managed to smuggle actual Earth food past the Academy's security scanners. There were 5 packages of instant ramyeon noodles, their colorful wrappers promising spicy, salty, wonderful flavor. A small container of gochujang paste, red and thick and smelling like home. Sheets of dried seaweed that crackled when he touched them. A bag of rice cakes, white and chewy. And best of all, a small electric kettle designed to work with the Academy's power systems. At the bottom of the box was a handwritten note from Somin. "I know Academy food is probably terrible. I hid these under boring school books so security would not look too close. The kettle is registered as a water heating device for human tea ceremonies, which I learned is educational and allowed. I miss you, little brother. Eat well." Minho held the package of ramyeon to his face and breathed in the familiar smell. His mouth began to water for the first time in weeks. His body remembered what real food was supposed to be like. "What are those items?" Veltar asked, his crystal form flickering with curiosity. "Food," Minho whispered. "Real food from my home planet." "But the Academy provides perfect nutrition," Veltar said, confused. "Why would you need additional substances?" Minho tried to explain, but realized his roommate could never understand. Veltar's species had evolved past the need for taste or pleasure in eating. They absorbed minerals directly through their crystal structure. The concept of enjoying food was as foreign to them as breathing underwater was to humans. That night, after Veltar had entered his dormancy cycle, Minho carefully set up the small electric kettle in the corner of his room. His hands trembled with excitement as he filled it with water from the room's dispenser. He had not cooked anything in 3 weeks. On Earth, he had helped his mother in the kitchen since he was small. The simple act of preparing food felt like returning to life after being dead. When the water began to boil, Minho opened the first package of ramyeon. The dried noodles fell into the kettle with a soft splash. He added the flavor packet, and immediately the room filled with the smell of garlic, onions, and spices. Veltar's crystals began to glow brighter, even in dormancy. The alien's light patterns showed confusion and concern. Minho cracked an egg from the package into the boiling noodles. He added a few pieces of seaweed and a small amount of gochujang paste. The smell grew stronger and more complex. For the first time since arriving at the Academy, Minho felt truly happy. This was not just food. It was culture, memory, and love all mixed together in a simple bowl. He turned off the kettle and poured the hot noodles into a bowl that came with his room's basic supplies. The first bite was like a miracle. The spicy, salty, rich flavor exploded across his tongue. His body seemed to wake up as if it had been sleeping for weeks. Veltar's crystals suddenly flashed bright red, the equivalent of alarm. "Minho, what is happening? Your biological readings are spiking. Are you ill?" "No," Minho laughed, slurping another mouthful of noodles. I am finally getting better. But his roommate was not convinced. The crystal being's sensors could detect thousands of complex chemical compounds in the air. The smell of cooking food was completely unknown in the sterile environment of the academy. To Veltar's advanced civilization, it seemed like Minho was creating some kind of chemical weapon. I must contact medical services, Veltar announced. You are consuming unknown substances that are altering your biology. Please do not, Minho begged. This is just food, real food. It is normal for humans. But Veltar's concern was growing stronger. The smells were triggering automatic safety responses in the dormitory's environmental systems. Warning lights began to flash in the hallway outside their room. Minho quickly finished his noodles and tried to clear away the evidence. But the smell of garlic and spices had already begun to spread through the dormitory's air recycling system. In rooms throughout the building, alien students were experiencing reactions to the unfamiliar chemical compounds. The insect-like Velkari began making clicking alarm sounds. The plant-based Thornish released defensive pheromones. The aquatic Mertani started producing excess slime, which was their species' response to potential toxins. Emergency alerts began sounding throughout the dormitory. The Academy's safety systems had never encountered anything like the complex organic compounds created by cooking food. Minho sat in his room with an empty bowl and a full stomach for the first time in weeks. He felt strong and happy and alive. But outside his door, he could hear the sound of panic spreading through the academy. He had no idea that his simple meal of ramyun noodles was about to turn the entire Galactic Academy upside down. The smell of garlic and spices moved through the dormitory like an invisible wave. Minho had no idea how powerful the simple aroma of his ramyun would be to creatures who had never experienced anything like it. On the floor below, a group of Velkari students were studying late in their common room. The Velkari looked like giant praying mantises, with silver skin and compound eyes. They were a peaceful species, known throughout the galaxy for their logical minds and careful thinking. When the smell of Minho's cooking reached them, their reaction was immediate and terrifying. The first Velkari student to detect the aroma froze completely. His antennae twitched rapidly as his brain tried to process the thousands of complex chemical signals. Within seconds, he began making sharp clicking sounds, the Velkari equivalent of screaming. Unknown toxin detected, he clicked to his study partners. Biological weapon in the building. The other Velkari caught the scent and began clicking, in panic. Their species had evolved to detect even tiny amounts of dangerous chemicals. To their sensitive systems, the rich smell of garlic, onions, and fermented spices seemed like the most complex poison they had ever encountered. Soon, all 12 Velkari on the floor were swarming in circles, their clicking growing louder and more frantic. They had not experienced fear like this since their home planet was attacked by space pirates 3 centuries ago. 2 floors up, the plant-based Thornish students were having an even worse reaction. The Thornish looked like walking trees with faces made of bark and leaves for hair. They were normally calm, slow-moving creatures who spent most of their time in meditation. When the cooking smells reached their floor, the Thornish thought they were under attack. Their species had developed chemical defenses over millions of years of evolution. When threatened, they could release clouds of toxic pollen that would make enemies sick. The complex organic compounds from Minho's ramyun triggered every defensive instinct they had. Within minutes, all 15 Thornish students began releasing bright yellow pollen into the air. The hallway filled with a thick cloud that made the automated cleaning robots shut down to protect their circuits. In the aquatic section of the dormitory, the Mertani were having their own crisis. These creatures lived in large tanks of specialized water and looked like a cross between dolphins and octopi. They were among the most intelligent species in the galaxy, with brains that could process information faster than computers. The Mertani had gills that filtered water, but they could also detect airborne chemicals through special organs. When the smell of cooked food reached their tanks, they thought someone was trying to poison the water supply. The Mertani began producing massive amounts of defensive slime. Their tanks turned thick and green as they pumped out protective chemicals. The water recycling system for their floor shut down automatically when sensors detected the contamination. Emergency lights flashed throughout the dormitory building. Automated safety systems began sealing off sections to prevent the spread of what appeared to be a chemical attack. The Academy's main computer sent urgent alerts to security forces, medical teams, and hazardous material specialists. Minho sat in his room, completely unaware of the chaos he had caused. He was washing his bowl and kettle, feeling better then. He had since arriving at the Academy. His stomach was full, his body felt strong, and for the first time in weeks he was not thinking about how much he missed home. Veltar, his crystal roommate, was pulsing with increasingly bright alarm colors. The being's natural sensors were detecting not just the cooking smells, but also the panic pheromones being released by dozens of different species throughout the building. "Minho," Veltar said, his musical voice tight with worry, "you must tell me exactly what you consumed. The entire dormitory is in crisis. Multiple species are showing signs of chemical poisoning." "I just ate noodles," Minho said, confused. "It is normal human food. Very simple." Before Veltar could respond, loud warning sirens began sounding. Emergency lights bathed their room in flashing red. Over the communication system, a calm voice spoke in the common galactic language. "Attention all students. This is an emergency alert. Unknown chemical agents have been detected in Dormitory Complex 7. All residents must remain in their rooms while hazardous material teams investigate. This is not a drill." Minho's eyes went wide. Chemical agents? What are they talking about? Heavy footsteps echoed in the hallway outside. Through the door's small window, Minho could see figures in full protective suits moving past. They carried scanners and sampling equipment that beeped loudly as they worked. Within minutes, there was a firm knock on their door. "This is Academy Security," said a deep voice. "Open immediately." Minho pressed the door release, and 3 figures in white hazmat suits entered the room. Their faces were hidden behind protective masks, but Minho could see they were from different species. The leader appeared to be humanoid, but much larger than a human. The second had tentacles visible through the suit's arm sections. The third seemed to float rather than walk. "I am Commander Zethkol," the leader said through his suit's speaker system. "We have detected dangerous chemical compounds originating from this room. Which of you is responsible?" Minho raised his hand nervously. "I cooked some food, but it was not dangerous. It was just noodles." The commander's scanner began beeping rapidly as he pointed it at Minho. "Student, our instruments detect over 3,000 different organic compounds on your person and in this room. Many of these chemicals are unknown to our databases. You may have created a biological weapon." "It was just ramyeon," Minho protested. "Korean instant noodles. People eat them every day on Earth." The second security officer, the one with tentacles, spoke up. "Commander, I am detecting active bacterial cultures on the subject." The compounds appear to be products of deliberate fermentation and chemical alteration through heat application. Heat application? Commander Zethkol sounded shocked. You deliberately applied heat to organic matter? What possible reason could you have for such dangerous activity? Minho looked around the room at the 3 security officers in their protective suits, at his worried roommate pulsing with alarm colors, at the emergency lights flashing red throughout the academy. All of this chaos because he cooked a simple bowl of noodles. I was hungry, he said quietly. The room fell silent except for the beeping of scanners and the distant sounds of panic from other floors. Commander Zethkol stood in the small dormitory room, his scanner beeping frantically as it tried to identify the thousands of unknown chemical compounds. The large alien's protective suit made small hissing sounds as its filtration system worked. Over time. Student Minho, the commander said through his helmet speaker, you will need to come with us for questioning. This may be the most serious security incident in Academy history. Minho looked at the empty bowl on his desk, the one that had held such wonderful ramyun just minutes ago. He could not understand how eating noodles had become a crime. Can I contact someone from my species? Minho asked. Maybe they can explain that this is normal human behavior. The tentacled security officer checked his communication device. There are 2 humans currently on the Academy faculty. Dr. Yoon, Ha-Jin in the Xenobiology Department, and Dr. Nam Yoonji in Cultural Studies. Dr. Yoon is closer. We will contact her immediately. 20 minutes later, Dr. Yoon Ha-Jin arrived at the dormitory. She was a middle-aged human woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a neat ponytail. She had been at the Academy for 5 years. One of only a handful of humans in advanced academic positions. When she entered the room and saw Minho sitting on his bed surrounded by security officers in hazmat suits, she immediately understood what had happened. "Oh, you poor boy," she said in Korean, then switched to the common galactic language. "Commander, I believe there has been a misunderstanding." "Dr. Yoon," Commander Zethkol replied, "this human student has created a biological hazard that has affected multiple species throughout the dormitory. Our scanners detect thousands of potentially toxic compounds." Dr. Yoon walked over to Minho's desk and examined the empty bowl and kettle. She picked up the discarded ramyun package and smiled sadly. "Commander, may I ask what you had for your last meal?" The large alien seemed confused by the question. "I consumed my daily nutritional requirements at 1800 hours. Standard protein synthesis number 7. Enhanced with mineral supplements for my species' needs." "And did you enjoy it?" "Enjoy it? I do not understand the question. Food is fuel. Consumption is a biological necessity, nothing more." Dr. Yoon nodded and turned to address all the security officers. "What this student did is called cooking. It is a normal human activity. We take raw ingredients and apply heat to change their chemical structure. This makes them easier to digest and creates pleasant tastes and smells." The floating security officer's translator device crackled as it processed her words. "You deliberately alter perfect nutrition? But why would any intelligent species make food less efficient?" "Because we enjoy it," Dr. Yoon said simply. "Humans eat for pleasure as well as nutrition. We have taste buds that can detect thousands of different flavor compounds. Food is not just fuel for us. It is culture, art, and emotional comfort." Commander Zethkol's scanner continued beeping as he processed this information. "Dr. Yoon, are you saying that this student's actions were normal for your species?" "Completely normal. In fact, I am surprised he waited this long. Academy nutrition. Paste is perfectly healthy for humans, but it has no flavor at all. Most humans would find it very difficult to eat for extended periods. The tentacled officer checked his readings again. But our instruments detect active bacterial cultures. These appear to be living organisms that could spread throughout the station. Dr. Yoon laughed gently. Those are probably from fermented ingredients. Humans eat bacteria all the time. We call them probiotics. They help with digestion. The gochujang paste he used is full of beneficial microorganisms. You eat living bacteria on purpose? The floating officer sounded horrified. We do. We also eat fungi, aged milk products, and vegetables that have been deliberately rotted in controlled conditions. We call it fermentation, and it creates complex flavors that we find delicious. The three security officers stood in silence, their scanners still beeping with readings they could not understand. Everything Dr. Yoon was telling them went against millions of years of galactic civilization's understanding of proper nutrition. Finally, Commander Zethkol spoke. Dr. Yoon, are you telling us that humans have never evolved past primitive eating behaviors? We have chosen not to, she replied. We could synthesize all our nutrition into efficient pastes and liquids like most galactic species. But we prefer the complexity and enjoyment of traditional food preparation. At this point, Professor Quindar arrived. The tall, purple being moved into the room on her tentacle-like lower body, her four arms carrying various scientific instruments. She was the Academy's leading expert on nutrition and had been called in to analyze the mysterious chemical compounds. Commander, she said in her melodious voice, I have preliminary results from the atmospheric analysis. The detected compounds include complex proteins, fermented carbohydrates, capsaicin, allicin, and approximately 200 other organic molecules. Most are completely unknown to our databases. Professor, Dr. Yoon interjected, those are just normal cooking ingredients. Capsaicin comes from spicy peppers. Allicin comes from garlic. These are common food plants on Earth. Professor Quindar's four eyes blinked in sequence as she processed this information. Dr. Yoon, are you suggesting that this human deliberately consumed plant-based toxins for pleasure? Spicy food is very popular among humans, Dr. Yoon confirmed. We enjoy the mild pain sensation that capsaicin creates. It releases endorphins in our brains. You eat poison to trigger a chemical high? Professor Quindar's tentacles writhed with scientific fascination and horror. This is the most primitive behavior I have encountered in 3 centuries of nutritional research. Minho finally spoke up. It tastes good, he said quietly. That is the only reason. Food should taste good. The room fell silent as every alien being processed this simple statement. The idea that food should taste good, rather than just provide optimal nutrition, was revolutionary to species that had abandoned flavor millions of years ago. Professor Quindar began taking readings from Minho himself. Student, your biological indicators show improved energy levels, better digestive function, and enhanced neurological activity compared to your previous medical scans. How is this possible if you consumed suboptimal nutrition? I was not eating enough before, Minho explained. The Academy food has no taste. It made me feel sick just thinking about eating it. So I was slowly starving. Dr. Yoon put a protective hand on Minho's shoulder. Professor, perhaps it is time the Academy learned about human food culture. We might have insights that could benefit other species as well. Professor Quindar's tentacles quivered with excitement. Yes! This requires extensive study. The implications for nutritional science could be enormous. A species that has maintained primitive consumption behaviors while achieving technological advancement? This contradicts everything we know about evolutionary development. Commander Zeth Cole finally turned off his scanner. So there is no security threat? No threat, Dr. Yoon confirmed. Just a homesick student cooking comfort food from his home planet. As the security officers began to leave, Professor Quindar lingered. Student Minho, would you be willing to demonstrate this food preparation process for my advanced nutrition class? For scientific purposes, of course. Minho looked at the empty ramyeon package in his hands, then at Dr. Yoon's encouraging smile. I suppose I could show them how to make ramyeon, he said. It is very simple. He had no idea that his simple offer would soon turn the entire Galactic Academy upside down. 3 days after the ramyeon incident, Minho found himself standing in the largest lecture hall at Galactic Academy. The enormous room was designed to hold 500 students from dozens of different species. Today, it was completely full. Word had spread quickly through the academy about the human student who had accidentally caused a building-wide emergency by cooking food. What should have been a simple demonstration for Professor Quindar's nutrition class had turned into the most popular academic event in the academy's history. Minho stood at the front of the room next to a portable cooking station that maintenance had set up for him. His hands shook as he looked out at the sea of alien faces staring back at him. There were the crystal-like Velkari with their compound eyes gleaming. Plant-based Thornish students swayed gently in the breeze from the air circulation system. Aquatic Mertani watched from specially designed water-filled observation pods. Dr. Yoon sat in the front row, giving him encouraging smiles. Next to her sat Dr. Nam Yoonji, the Academy's cultural anthropologist, who had insisted on attending to study this unprecedented moment of human-alien cultural exchange. Professor Quindar moved to the center of the room on her tentacle-like lower body. Her 4 arms gestured dramatically as she addressed the packed auditorium. "Students and colleagues," she began, her melodious voice carrying clearly through the hall's sound system. "Today we witness something that challenges everything we know about nutritional science and evolutionary development. We have discovered a species that has achieved space travel while maintaining primitive food preparation behaviors." A murmur of excitement rippled through the crowd. Several students in the back rows stood up to get a better view of the strange human. Professor Quindar continued, "Student Minho will demonstrate the process his species calls cooking. Please observe carefully and take detailed notes. This may be the first and only time we witness such behavior in a controlled academic setting." Minho cleared his throat nervously. Speaking to 500 aliens about making noodles was not something they had prepared him for in his academy. Training. Hello everyone, he said, his voice amplified by the translation system. I am just going to make ramyeon. It is very simple food that humans eat when we are hungry and want something quick and tasty. A Velkari student in the 3rd row raised one of his 4 arms. Student Minho, you used the word tasty. Can you define this term for those of us who have evolved past sensory eating? Minho thought for a moment. How do you explain taste to creatures who had never experienced it? Taste is pleasure from food, he said slowly. When I eat something tasty, it makes me happy. My tongue can detect different flavors: sweet, salty, sour, bitter, spicy. These sensations make eating enjoyable instead of just necessary. Ripple of confused chittering came from the insectoid students. One of them clicked loudly. But why would you want eating to be enjoyable? Efficiency is more important than pleasure. For humans, Minho replied, pleasure is important too. We do not just want to survive, we want to enjoy our lives. Professor Quindar's tentacles writhed with fascination. Proceed with your demonstration, Student Minho. Show us how humans alter perfect nutrition for the sake of enjoyment. Minho filled his electric kettle with water and turned it on. As it began to heat, he held up a package of ramyeon noodles. These are dried noodles made from wheat flour, he explained. Humans grow wheat plants, grind the seeds into powder, mix it with water and shape it into long, thin strips. Then we dry them so they last a long time without spoiling. A thornish student swayed forward, his bark-like face showing interest. You deliberately dehydrate food to preserve it? This is an ancient technique we abandoned millions of years ago. Humans still use many ancient techniques, Dr. Nam Yunji called out from the front row. We preserve traditions that other species have abandoned for efficiency. The water in the kettle began to bubble and steam. Minho opened the ramyeon package and held up the brick of dried noodles. Now I add the noodles to boiling water, he said, dropping them in. The hot water will soften them and make them easy to chew. A floating gas-based student pulsed with different colors as it spoke through its translation device. Why do you apply heat? Heat destroys many nutrients and requires energy that could be used more efficiently. Heat changes the texture and creates new flavors, Minho explained. It makes food easier to digest and more enjoyable to eat. He opened the small packets that came with the noodles. This is flavor powder, he said, holding up the contents. It contains salt, spices, dried vegetables, and other ingredients that will make the noodles taste good. The audience leaned forward as Minho added the powder to the boiling water. Immediately, the familiar smell of garlic, onion, and spices began to fill the lecture hall. The reaction was immediate and dramatic. The Velkari students began clicking nervously, their sensitive chemical detectors overwhelmed by the complex aroma. The Thornish released small puffs of defensive pollen. The Meritani in their water pods started producing concerned bubbles. But something else was happening too. Some of the alien students were reacting with what appeared to be curiosity rather than alarm. A young Zephyrian, a species that looked like tall, thin humanoids with silver skin, stood up in the middle section. "Professor," she called out, "my species has chemical sensors similar to human taste buds, though we have not used them for food in millennia. I am detecting pleasant sensations from these airborne compounds." Professor Quindar's 4 eyes widened with surprise. "Student Kira, are you suggesting that you are experiencing what humans call flavor?" I think so," Kira replied, sounding amazed. "It is unlike anything I have felt before. The chemical stimulation is creating neural responses in my brain's pleasure centers." Excited chatter broke out across the auditorium as other students began reporting similar experiences. Species that had not tasted food in millions of years were rediscovering sensations they thought had been lost forever. Minho cracked an egg into the boiling noodles, added some seaweed, and stirred everything together. The smells grew richer and more complex. "Now it is ready," he said, turning off the kettle. He poured the hot noodles into a bowl and picked up a pair of chopsticks. The entire lecture hall fell silent as they watched him take his first bite. Minho slurped the noodles, loudly the way ramyeon was meant to be eaten. The sound echoed through the quiet auditorium. He chewed slowly, his face showing obvious pleasure and satisfaction. "It tastes perfect," he said with a happy sigh. "Spicy, salty, warm, and filling. This is what food should be like." A crystalline student in the back row suddenly spoke up, his voice like chiming bells. "I am detecting electromagnetic fluctuations in the human's brain. The pleasure centers are extremely active. This food consumption is triggering the same neural responses as art appreciation or music. Professor Quindar's tentacles were practically vibrating with excitement. Students, do you understand what we are witnessing? This human experience is eating as an aesthetic pleasure, not just biological necessity. Food consumption is art form. Dr. Nam Yoonji stood up from her seat. Professor, if I may add some context, what Minho just demonstrated is one of the simplest forms of human cooking. We have developed over 400,000 different recipes and techniques. Entire human cultures are defined by their food traditions. The lecture hall erupted with questions and amazed chatter. Students from dozens of species were experiencing completely new sensations and ideas. As Minho finished his bowl of noodles, he realized that something important had just happened. He had not just made lunch, he had introduced the galaxy to a completely new way of thinking about food, pleasure, and what it means to be alive. The questions from the audience continued for 2 more hours. The day after Minho's cooking demonstration, Dr. Nam Yoonji sat in her office preparing for the most important lecture of her career. Word about the ramyeon demonstration had spread beyond the academy. Scholars from across the galaxy were requesting access to her research on human food culture. Her office was filled with alien colleagues who had never shown interest in human studies before. Professor Quindar paced nervously on her tentacles. Commander Zethkol sat in a specially reinforced chair, still trying to understand how his security incident had become a galactic academic sensation. Dr. Nam, said Professor Zelmoth, the Academy's leading evolutionary biologist, I must admit that I am deeply confused. How has your species maintained such primitive behaviors while achieving technological advancement? According to all known patterns of development, this should be impossible. Dr. Nam smiled and activated her holographic display. Images of Earth appeared in the air above her desk, bustling food markets, restaurant kitchens, families cooking together. Professor Zelmoth, I think the confusion comes from the word primitive. What you call primitive, we call cultural heritage. Humans have made a conscious choice to preserve our food traditions even as we advance technologically. She changed the display to show statistics and data charts. On Earth, we have over 400,000 documented recipes. We have entire industries devoted to food preparation, food art, and food education. Human children learn to cook before they learn advanced mathematics. Professor Quindar's 4 eyes blinked in sequence. Dr. Nam, are you saying that humans teach inefficient food preparation to their young instead of focusing on optimal nutrition? Science? We teach both, Dr. Nam replied. We understand nutrition perfectly well, but we also believe that food should be enjoyable, culturally meaningful, and socially important. Humans often gather to eat together. We call it sharing a meal, and it is one of our most important social bonding activities. The aliens in the room exchanged confused looks. The idea of eating as a social activity was completely foreign to species that had optimized nutrition into quick, efficient consumption. Dr. Nam continued her presentation. Let me give you some examples of human food complexity. We have a cooking technique called fermentation, where we deliberately allow controlled bacterial growth to create new flavors. We age cheeses for years to develop taste. We smoke meats for weeks to add flavor compounds. You deliberately introduce bacteria into food? Commander Zethkol sounded horrified. That seems like intentional contamination. Controlled fermentation creates beneficial bacteria that aid digestion and create complex flavors, Dr. Nam explained. Humans have been doing this for thousands of years. Some of our most prized foods are heavily fermented: kimchi, cheese, wine, bread, yogurt. Professor Zelmoth leaned forward with scientific curiosity. Dr. Nam, You mentioned that humans travel to experience different foods. Can you elaborate on this behavior? The holographic display changed to show images of humans in various restaurants and food markets around Earth and the colonies. Food tourism is a major industry among humans. We travel across continents and even between planets to taste regional specialties. Different human cultures have developed completely different approaches to cooking. But why? Asked Professor Quindar. If you have achieved optimal nutrition, why seek variety? Dr. Nam paused, thinking about how to explain something so fundamental to human experience. Because variety brings joy. Each different flavor combination creates new experiences, new pleasures, new memories. Humans do not just eat to fuel our bodies. We eat to celebrate, to comfort ourselves when sad, to show love to family and friends. She changed the display to show a human family gathered around a dinner table, sharing food and laughing together. This is a typical human meal gathering, she said. The food provides nutrition, but the sharing provides emotional and social connection. We bond with each other through the act of eating together. The room fell silent as the alien academics tried to process this information. The idea that nutrition could be connected to emotion and social relationships was revolutionary to species that had separated eating from all other activities millions of years ago. Dr. Nam activated another section of her presentation. Let me show you the complexity of human food culture through one example, something we call pizza. The display showed various images of pizza, from simple flatbread with tomatoes to elaborate creations with dozens of ingredients. Pizza is bread topped with sauce, cheese, and various other ingredients, then baked in an oven. Humans have created over 10,000 different pizza recipes. Each region of Earth has its own style. Some humans argue passionately about which style is best. Professor Zelmoth's scales changed color with confusion. You have 10,000 variations of a single food item, and humans engage in arguments about the optimal preparation method? We are passionate about our food, Dr. Nam laughed. Humans will travel hundreds of kilometers to taste a particular chef's cooking. We have competitions where cooks try to create the most delicious food. We have entire entertainment industries devoted to watching people cook. Commander Zethkol leaned back in his chair, looking overwhelmed. Dr. Nam, are you telling us that humans have built major economic and entertainment industries around inefficient food preparation? Food is a multi-trillion credit industry on Earth, Dr. Nam confirmed. Restaurants, food production, cooking equipment, food media, food education, it employs billions of humans across the galaxy. She changed the display to show cooking shows, food magazines, and culinary schools. We have universities devoted entirely to cooking. Students spend years learning to prepare food artistically. We have celebrity chefs who are as famous as movie stars or scientists. The aliens stared at the images in amazement. To species that had reduced eating to a simple biological function, the idea of food as art, entertainment, and industry was mind-boggling. Professor Quindar's tentacles writhed with excitement and confusion. Dr. Nam, this suggests that humans have built an entire civilization around suboptimal biological processes. How is this possible? How did you achieve space travel while maintaining such focus on pleasure and culture? Dr. Nam finished. Professor, perhaps that is exactly why we achieved space travel. Humans do not just want to survive. We want to live well, to experience joy, to create beautiful and meaningful things. Our drive for pleasure and culture motivates us to explore, to create, to push boundaries. She turned to face all the alien academics in her office. You see, cooking as primitive and inefficient. We see it as one of our greatest achievements, the transformation of basic survival into art, culture, and social connection. Dr. Nam closed her presentation with an image of Minho in the lecture hall, surrounded by fascinated alien students sharing his simple bowl of ramyun. "Yesterday you all witnessed something historic," she said. "Not just a human cooking noodles, but the first time in galactic history that advanced species reconsidered the relationship between efficiency and enjoyment." The room remained quiet as each alien processed what they had learned. Finally, Professor Zelmoth spoke. "Dr. Nam, I think we need to completely reconsider our understanding of human development, and perhaps our understanding of development in general." Outside the office window, they could see groups of alien students gathered in the academy courtyards, talking excitedly about taste, flavor, and the strange human concept of enjoying food. The Cultural Revolution had already begun. 2 weeks after the lecture hall demonstration, Minho found himself in the Academy's main laboratory, surrounded by the most advanced food analysis equipment in the galaxy. What had started as academic curiosity had grown into a full scientific investigation into human food culture. The lab was buzzing with activity. Alien scientists from dozens of species worked alongside newly installed cooking equipment. The Academy had approved an unprecedented research budget to study what they now called the human culinary phenomenon. Professor Quindar moved between workstations on her tentacles, coordinating the most complex taste test in galactic history. "Students and colleagues," she announced, "today we will conduct controlled experiments to determine if other species can experience what humans call flavor." Standing next to Minho was Lee Dong-yuk, another human student who had arrived 3 days ago with special permission to assist in the research. Dong-yuk had been studying culinary arts on New Seoul Colony before transferring to the Academy. His family had sent him with a massive care package filled with Korean cooking ingredients. "I cannot believe this is happening," Dong-yuk whispered to Minho in Korean. "When I applied to study engineering here, I never thought I would end up teaching aliens how to cook." Dr. Yoon approached them with a tablet full of data. "The response has been incredible," she said. "We have volunteers from 47 different species who want to participate in taste testing. Some of them are flying here from other star systems just to experience flavor." The first volunteer was Kira, the young Zephyrian student who had discovered she could detect flavors during the ramyun demonstration. Her silver skin gleamed under the laboratory lights as she approached the cooking station nervously. "I have not consumed anything but nutritional paste for my entire life," she said, her melodious voice showing excitement and fear. "My species evolved past the need for taste receptors, but apparently some of us still have dormant ones." Minho and Dong-yuk had prepared a selection of simple Korean dishes to test different types of flavors. They started with plain white rice. "Mild and safe for any species that could process carbohydrates? Just take a small amount," Dr. Yoon advised Kira. "We do not know how your system will react." Kira carefully picked up a single grain of rice with a pair of scientific tweezers. She placed it on her tongue and her eyes immediately went wide. "It has substance," she said in amazement. "It is not just nutrition, there is texture and a subtle sweetness I have never experienced before." Professor Quindar recorded every word while her instruments monitored Kira's biological responses. "Subject shows increased neural activity in previously dormant brain regions," she noted, "measuring elevated production of dopamine and endorphins." The next volunteer was Veltar, Minho's crystal roommate. The being's transparent form flickered with nervous energy as he approached the food station. I do not have a mouth in the traditional sense, Veltar explained. My species absorbs minerals directly through our crystalline structure, but our scientists believe we might be able to process organic compounds through our surface membranes. Dongyuk had prepared a simple miso soup, mild, warm, and full of umami flavors that might be detectable to different types of biology. Try just touching the liquid, Dr. Yoon suggested. Veltar extended one crystal finger and dipped it into the warm soup. Immediately, his entire body began glowing with colors that had never been seen before, deep golds and warm ambers that pulsed in rhythm with his excitement. By the core of creation, Veltar whispered, his musical voice filled with wonder. I can taste. I can actually taste. It is like hearing music for the first time, but through my entire body. The laboratory erupted with excited chatter as alien scientists frantically recorded this unprecedented event. A crystalline species experiencing flavor was thought to be impossible. The next volunteer was more challenging. Thexkar was a Velkari, one of the insectoid species that had panicked during the original Ramyon incident. His compound eyes gleamed nervously as he clicked his mandibles. My species has chemical detection systems, he explained, but we use them only for identifying toxins and pheromones. We have never tried to experience pleasure from chemical inputs. Minho offered him a small piece of bulgogi, Korean marinated, beef that had been grilled to perfection. The meat was tender and sweet, with complex flavors from soy sauce, garlic, and pear marinade. Thexkar took the smallest possible bite and froze completely. His antennae twitched rapidly as his brain processed the new sensations. I understand now why you were making those sounds during your demonstration. He clicked slowly. This creates neural responses similar to successfully completing a complex mathematical proof, but in my chemical processing centers. The taste tests continued for hours. Each species that tried human food had different reactions, but almost all of them experienced something they had never felt before. A floating gas being named Aertos discovered that spicy kimchi created electrical patterns in its gaseous form that resembled aurora displays. A plant-based Thornish student found that fermented foods triggered photosynthesis responses that made him feel energized and happy. The most dramatic reaction came from an aquatic Mirtani named Splashvel. When she tasted Korean fried chicken, through her water tank's feeding tube, she began producing bioluminescent displays that lit up the entire laboratory in waves of blue and green light. The flavor compounds are creating synesthetic responses, she bubbled excitedly through her translator. I am seeing sounds and hearing colors. This is the most intense sensory experience of my life. Not all the reactions were positive. A rock-based granite student found human food completely overwhelming and had to be sedated when the flavors triggered what appeared to be a panic attack in his mineral nervous system. But for most species, tasting human food was a revelation. As the day wound down, Professor Quindar compiled her preliminary results. Colleagues, she announced to the packed laboratory, we have documented that at least 38 different species retain dormant flavor detection capabilities. The implications for galactic culture are staggering. Minho looked around the laboratory at dozens of alien scientists excitedly discussing their first taste experiences. Creatures that had eaten flavorless paste for millions of years were now arguing about whether they preferred sweet or salty flavors. Dongyuk nudged him with his elbow. Look what you started, he said in Korean. One bowl of ramyeon and now the entire galaxy wants to learn how to cook. Dr. Nam Yunji approached them with a huge smile on her face. Boys, I think you should know. We have received requests from over 200 universities across the galaxy. They all want to establish human food culture programs. Food culture programs? Minho asked, still not quite believing what was happening. You are looking at the future professors? Dr. Nam laughed. The galaxy wants to learn everything humans know about cooking, flavor, and food culture. You two might be the most important humans in galactic history. As alien students lined up for second and third tastes of Korean food, Minho realized that his simple act of cooking ramyun when he was homesick had accidentally started the biggest cultural revolution the galaxy had ever seen, and they were just getting started. 6 months had passed since the ramyun incident that changed everything. Minho stood in front of the newly constructed Cultural Nutrition Laboratory, reading the golden plaque beside the door. Established 2387, the first interdisciplinary program dedicated to the study of pleasure-based consumption behaviors in galactic civilization. The laboratory was enormous, with cooking stations designed for dozens of different alien species. There were special chambers for gas-based beings, aquatic pools for water dwellers, and mineral absorption platforms for crystalline creatures. The air filtration system had been completely redesigned to handle the complex aromatic compounds that cooking produced. Professor Minho, called Dr. Nam Yunji as she approached with a stack of enrollment applications. We have a problem. A good problem, but still a problem. Minho still felt strange being called professor at age 19, but the Galactic Academy had created a special emergency teaching position for him when demand for human food culture classes exploded across known space. What kind of problem, Dr. Nam? He asked, taking the applications from her hands. We have over 10,000 students from 400 different species trying to enroll in your basic cooking class. The waiting list extends for 3 years. Minho flipped through the applications in amazement. There were requests from species he had never heard of, from star systems on the far edge of the galaxy. All of them wanted to learn the human art of making food taste good. The Galactic Education Council is pressuring us to expand the program, Dr. Nam continued. They want to establish cultural nutrition departments on 50 major worlds within the next year. Inside the laboratory, Minho could see his afternoon class in session. Dongyuk was teaching 20 alien students how to make kimchi fried rice. The sight still amazed him. A young Korean human surrounded by creatures from across the galaxy, all of them focused intently on learning to stir-fry vegetables. Student Kira, the Zephyrian who had been among the first to experience taste, was now Donghyuk's teaching assistant. Her silver skin gleamed as she helped a nervous Thornish student measure soy sauce correctly. The most remarkable thing, Dr. Nam said, watching the class through the window, is how it has changed their entire approach to life. These students are not just learning to cook. They are learning to appreciate pleasure, to value experiences over efficiency. This was true. The alien students who learned to cook showed measurable improvements in creativity, social bonding, and what humans called happiness. Species that had not laughed in millions of years were now gathering for dinner parties where they shared food and stories. Minho's communication device chimed with an incoming call. The holographic display showed the familiar face of his sister. "Soman back on Earth!" "Little brother," she said excitedly. "I just saw the news broadcast about your program. They are saying you are the most famous human in the galaxy." Minho laughed. "It is strange, Soman. All I did was cook the ramyun you sent me. Now every alien species wants to learn Korean cooking. Mom and Dad are so proud," Soman continued. And guess what? I have news for you. The Earth government has approved my application to join the Cultural Nutrition Program as a graduate student. I will be there next month to help establish the Korean cuisine specialization. The idea of his sister joining the program filled Minho with joy. Cooking with family had always been one of his favorite activities on Earth. Professor Quindar approached them, moving gracefully on her tentacles. The nutritional scientist had become one of the strongest supporters of the Cultural Nutrition Program after her own research showed that pleasure-based eating improved health outcomes for most species. "Minho," she said, "I have extraordinary news. The results from our 6-month study are complete. Species that have incorporated pleasure-based eating into their diets show significant improvements in longevity, cognitive function, and psychological well-being." She activated her holographic display, showing charts and graphs of biological data. "We have evidence that the galactic abandonment of flavor and food culture may have been a massive evolutionary mistake. Your species appears to have preserved something essential that the rest of us lost." This news did not surprise Minho. He had watched hundreds of alien students discover joy through food over the past months. Species that had seemed cold and purely logical became warmer and more social when they learned to cook and eat together. "There is more," Professor Quindar continued. "The Galactic Council has decided to fund a comprehensive study of human cultural practices. They want to identify what other primitive behaviors might actually be advanced evolutionary strategies." Dr. Yoon joined their group, carrying a tablet full of messages. "Minho, I have requests from the Galactic Museum of Natural History, the Institute for Advanced Cultural Studies, and the University of Andromeda. They all want you to give lectures about human food culture." "I never imagined that making noodles would make me a famous professor," Minho said, shaking his head in amazement. Through the laboratory windows, he could see students from his morning class gathering in the new dining area. They had cooked Korean-style lunch together and were now sitting around tables, sharing food and conversation. The sight filled him with warmth. A Velkari student was teaching a Zephyrian how to use chopsticks properly. A group of Thornish were comparing notes about different kimchi fermentation techniques. 2 Mertani in their mobility suits were laughing together over bowls of spicy soup. "Look at them," Dr. Nam said softly. 6 months ago, most of these species barely interacted with each other. Now they are forming friendships over shared meals. It was true. The Cultural Nutrition Program had created the most integrated social environment in the Academy's history. Students who learned to cook together seemed to lose many of the prejudices and barriers that had separated galactic species for millennia. Minho's communication device chimed again. This time it was a priority message from the Galactic Academy. "Administration. Professor Minho," the message began, "we are pleased to inform you that the Cultural Nutrition Program has been selected as the Academy's flagship interdisciplinary initiative. Funding has been approved for expansion to 100 worlds within the next 5 years. As Minho read the message, he thought about the chain of events that had led to this moment. He had been a homesick 19-year-old who just wanted to eat something that tasted like home. His simple act of cooking ramyeon had accidentally revealed something profound about the relationship between pleasure, culture, and civilization. "Professor Minho," called one of his students from the dining area. It was Veltar, his former roommate, whose crystal body now glowed with warm colors that had not existed in his species before they learned to taste food. "Yes, Veltar," Minho replied. "We were discussing something, and we wanted to ask you a question." Before humans taught us about cooking, we ate only for nutrition. Now we eat for pleasure as well. This has made us happier, we think. But we do not understand why other advanced species abandoned this. Can you explain? Minho looked around at the dining area full of alien students sharing food and laughter. He thought about the question carefully. I think, he said slowly, that when species become very advanced, they sometimes forget that efficiency is not the only goal in life. Humans never forgot that living well is as important as living efficiently. He paused, watching a group of students teach each other traditional songs from their different homeworlds while they ate. Maybe being primitive sometimes means remembering what is truly important. The dining area erupted with clicking, chiming, and bubbling sounds of agreement from dozens of different species. That evening, Minho stood on the observation deck of Nexus Prime, looking out at the stars. His communication device showed messages from across the galaxy, universities wanting to establish cooking programs, governments asking for cultural exchange programs, species requesting help rediscovering their own lost food traditions. A simple bowl of ramyun noodles had changed the course of galactic civilization. His sister, Somin, appeared beside him in hologram form, calling from Earth. So, little brother, she said with a grin. Ready to teach the galaxy how to make kimchi? Minho smiled back at her. I think we are going to need a lot more gochujang. As alien students passed by on their way to evening cooking classes, many of them bowed respectfully to the young human who had accidentally reminded the galaxy how to enjoy being alive. The revolution had only just begun.